Well, hello there. My name is Hannah and this is Gamers Waypoint. So last year I made a video that was called Steep versus SSX, which obviously kind of put Steep up against SSX, an old favourite of mine from the extreme sports genre, and I kind of discussed the differences between the two and what I preferred about each game. Now recently a commenter on that particular video has said that they wondered what I felt about Riders Republic in comparison to Steep, so that today is what we are going to be discussing. So if you haven't encountered it yet, Riders Republic is the newest game by Ubisoft, which also created Steep, and it has a lot of the same mechanics. The idea is that you take part in a lot of extreme sports, trials, races, tricks, competitions, and you can ride anything from bikes, BMXs, mountain bikes, to skis, snowboards, and even snowmobiles, and a few other things as well if you happen to check out the Shack Daddy events, which if you play I'm pretty sure you will because they are wacky. So anyway, this video is going to be titled Steep versus Riders Republic, but I'm not going to be going too deep into Steep as I did last time because there is a particular video on that, but I will obviously be referencing it in comparison and with regards to Riders Republic. So the thing is that both of these games are made by Ubisoft, and I personally get the feeling that Riders Republic is what they wanted Steep to be. I enjoy Steep, I hope I made that point in the other video. It's just that I did prefer the likes of SSX, where I felt like there was more to grasp at. For me, Steep was just a little bit too calm, which for a lot of gamers, they will love that. But for me, I need something more hectic, I need something going on, and that is what Riders Republic actually gives the player. And so in my mind, I think that they have taken Steep and expanded upon it and been like, we need to build something on this foundation that is going to be even more fun and even more kind of in-depth. And to me, that's Riders Republic. So if you haven't been able to tell already, I have been enjoying playing it these past few days whilst it's been released, and it is everything I wanted Steep to be and a little bit more. It might sound a bit strange, but rather than a Ubisoft game, it actually plays a little bit more like an EA game in my opinion. It gives me Skate vibes, which is awesome because I love the Skate games, looking forward to Skate 4 when it finally comes out. And I've been arguing for ages now that we need more extreme sports games, so I am super hyped that we are getting more of those because they're just so fun and they're, you know, challenging but also wacky and hectic, and also can be quite soothing, calming. Not entirely sure how to really frame it, but I just always enjoy them. And yeah, it's like Ubisoft have maybe taken some tips out of EA's book. Now I know we don't always agree with what EA does these days, but usually when it comes to the extreme sports side of stuff, they still know how to make a great game. So I think what's happened is they've maybe taken some tips out of their playbook, as in Ubisoft have, and implemented them to the likes of Steep. So the funny thing is that Riders Republic doesn't actually add too many things on top of what Steep already had. So if you take a look at the sports wheel, you will see a lot of the same vehicles, as we can call them. You can use the rocket suit, you can use a wingsuit, you can ski, you can snowboard, etc. The only real addition in terms of Riders Republic is the biking stuff, which is awesome anyway, but I think that they just needed to find a way to incorporate that in a more organic way, if that makes sense. Everything that was included in Steep was to do with snow sports, but sometimes it just felt like it was there for the sake of it being there, as in like they came up with the idea and were like, oh, we'll put this in, but then I personally just ended up dossing around the mountain on these things, not really giving them any true purpose. Just in case you don't use the word doss, it kind of means like, you know, moseying around, lazing about, not doing much of anything in particular. And although I do enjoy going into Steep from time to time, that's kind of always been my experience. I haven't always felt like there's anything to go at once I actually get into the game. Now, one thing I will admit is that Steep doesn't really handhold, and a load of gamers love that, and that is absolutely fine. I'm not saying I particularly want hand-holding, but I just need a little bit more of something, and to me Riders Republic gives you that, purely because they have more structured cutscenes and NPCs. So Steep, in my experience, sometimes I'd be just going down the mountain, I'd encounter a new kind of waypoint on the map or whatever, and a cutscene would ensue, and I would think it was just completely out of the blue. I could have been playing for hours and not encountered anything like that, and I'm like, oh, who's this voice talking to me now? Is this God? Don't know what that was. But in any case, yeah, the voiceover would start, and in some ways it would be this really poetic writing, which in its own right is awesome, but it just seemed a bit random to me sometimes, whereas Riders Republic has NPCs from the beginning. You know where you stand with them in terms of the storyline, you know that you are aiming to participate in the Riders Invitational and you have to prove yourself before you can actually join up to do that, which means obviously you have to do a lot of races and trials and tricks and everything like that to get your reputation up, but also at the same time you have kind of like intermittent video calls with the guy who's basically your tutor at this point. He may be flipping burgers, but he also definitely knows how to get you where you want to go in terms of the extreme sports side of life, and he will check in with you from time to time, and when big events, anything from like Red Bull or Santa Cruz or anything like that comes up on the map, they'll basically explain it to you, but not in like, you know, this is the race. It's like, you know, this is a big event, this is gonna get you known, this is gonna get you seen. If you win this thing, it's definitely going to help you with your reputation on the road to being invited to the invitational. Invited to an invitational. Showing everyone up at a big competition. There you go. And I like that because it feels more like you're in tune with whatever story there is in the game, because I understand in these sorts of games there really isn't always a story, it's very loose, you know, it's usually a competition or some rivals, etc. So I'm not saying that I need some big dramatic experience, it just makes it feel like you have more of a place within the game, if that makes sense, because you are able to experience these events with kind of like-minded people, as it were. Even though they may be NPCs, it creates that atmosphere of like hyping everyone up and being like, you know, you got this and we're gonna rule the mountains basically. It's really quite cool, which is kind of what SSX Remake in 2012 had as well. Not in terms of like a lot of competitions happening between a lot of different people, but basically the aim of the game was to beat Mac. Mac was going to do all the deadly descents before you were going to do it, so you have to get in front of him, ahead of him, and beat him to the chase. There is some sort of storyline there, whereas Steep, it just seems to be more about the, you know, snowboarding experience, which is absolutely fine. It's just more of a simulator in that kind of respect. And honestly, if you want like a chill, calm experience after work or whatever, putting on Steep is a really good idea, because it is just honestly super chilled and really relaxing, as long as you don't keep, you know, giving yourself concussion as you roll down the mountain, which I often do. But yeah, I suppose my point here is that I feel like Riders feels more full of life, and for me as a gamer, that's more of my preference. Just to kind of piggyback off of that point as well, I do feel like Riders Republic has more of like a community feel about it. You can obviously encounter people up on the mountains and the ridges of Steep, but there doesn't seem to be so much of a communicative experience with regards to that, whereas in Riders, there are riders everywhere. People are playing all the time, the servers are full. I know that the game has just dropped, so a lot of people are playing it, and that obviously the amount of players will probably kind of plateau after a while and become like a steady stream of true fans of the game. But for now, you can invite people to join groups, and you can just see everybody taking part in their specific trials and races. It's interesting because, I mean, thankfully you can't bump into them, but yeah, you, whilst you're kind of roaming, ambling, wandering about the region, can see people participating in races, and you can see them doing their tricks and everything, and it actually feels, I would say, more like a festival environment, which is definitely what they were going for. But yeah, it's full of life, and it's awesome to be able to see everybody else doing all the tricks that they're doing and zooming down mountains whilst you're zooming down mountains, but you might actually be participating in two different things. It just feels like everybody in it together, and it's a nice whole feeling, if that makes sense, because you can see people enjoying the game like you're enjoying it at the same time. So if you did happen to watch the Steep versus SSX video, you might recall me saying that SSX was actually supposed to be something a little bit grander than it was, even though I do love SSX. It actually stands for Surfing, Snowboarding and Motocross. Now, of course, in Riders Republic, there's no surfing and there's no motocross, but there are motorised vehicles and it does go into more sports, which seemed to be what SSX was planning to do in the original case of the game. And I just find this kind of interesting because in some ways, despite being a Ubisoft game and despite obviously missing the other S and X from the title, if that makes sense, it feels a bit like what I suppose SSX was trying to be from the get-go in terms of this all-inclusive sports game. And this I suppose also harks back to when I said it feels like Ubisoft have taken something out of EA's playbook. It's interesting because I feel like you could show somebody Riders Republic and they would probably be like, this has SSX feels, and it has more of an SSX feel than Steep did, and that's probably also why I'm enjoying it quite a bit. But yes, because you've got more motorised vehicles, and if you do the Shack Daddy events, you get like rocket powered skis, like a rocket powered bike. It's all extremely hectic stuff, but at the same time it feels like there are more options there. And obviously back when SSX first released in like 2001, they were not going to be able to fit all these kind of sports in like we can do now. We've come a long way in terms of game development and game architecture, so what we are experiencing now is arguably the right time to be experiencing it, purely because of like online gaming, server space, and you know, the actual capabilities that next gen consoles or PCs etc. have, and now they can afford us that experience to really, you know, see and feel the game and play it as it was intended to be. But yes, just a little side note, it feels like what SSX was trying to get at from the beginning, so I do appreciate it for that as well. Okay, it wouldn't be a me video if I didn't talk about music, would it? So here we go. In comparison to Steep, Riders Republic has a much more present soundtrack. You can hear it throughout the game. It is supposed to be heard. So one thing I said in the last video is that you had really great soundtracks for the SSX games like Basement Jaxx, and when you got to the 2012 remake you had like Noisier etc, which was awesome, whereas Steep is kind of just this atmospheric, out in the middle of nowhere feel in terms of you just have wind noise. It's kind of quiet but only noisy by the environment, if that makes sense. The things surrounding you make the noise, not necessarily the music. The one thing I did notice in Steep is like when you crash, a piece from the cinematic orchestra plays, but that's the only real thing I ever picked up on, whereas in Riders Republic there's a full-on soundtrack. If you want to check it out, there is an official playlist on Spotify, so do check that out. But one thing that piqued my ears was the fact that The Offspring is on the soundtrack, and that just brought back so much nostalgia, which is interesting because it's not nostalgia for these types of games. The Offspring were the soundtrack for the Crazy Taxi games way back when, and they were basically the entire soundtrack for that. As if you were playing Crazy Taxi, you just had a going all the way through. It was awesome, and it reminds me of that, and so it makes me happy playing Riders Republic because you get to play The Offspring whilst also, you know, donning some tricks and absolutely owning events. But there are obviously way more artists on the soundtrack, and it's a prominent experience this time around. Like I said, because you get those festival vibes, you hear the music, it's supposed to be up loud, whereas, as I said, in comparison to Steep is supposed to be a more calm experience. So Riders has my vote on that level because I'm a stickler for a soundtrack. You get my attention if you play me music. It's super simple. So yes, I just wanted to point that out because that is a difference. And with regards to the comment that started this video, Riders Republic does seem more vibrant in comparison to Steep, sonically and visually. Both are beautiful games, by the way. They both depict things really well. The only thing with Riders Republic, with it being an online game, is sometimes you do get a little bit of lagging, some latency. That's most likely due to either the server or your online internet connection, but it does kind of create some glitchiness sometimes, but it's not too prominent. And yeah, all the surroundings when they're fully loaded in, and when you've not got, you know, 60 people racing at once in a mass race, it looks really beautiful and it looks really scenic, and they've done a really good job with it. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed and maybe learnt a little something. Give Riders Republic a try, and Steep if you haven't already, because they are both great games in their own right. Please let us know in the comments below what you think, which one you enjoy, what you're playing at the moment. Leave a like, give a share, always very much appreciated. If you've made it to this point in the video, I appreciate you so much as well. And until next time, I hope you have a great day, hope you have a fantastic week, and keep on exploring. See you later, guys.